So I'm getting asked a lot at the moment by clients whether they should have Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Pinterest. There's so many different ones, social media platforms nowadays. And also a lot of clients are saying, oh, can you just put a Facebook icon on our website or a Twitter icon? And then we do it and it links off to a terrible Facebook site with 10 likes or a Twitter page that hasn't been used. Yeah.
The problem is that everyone's saying you should be involved in social media. Everywhere you look, whether it's in the news or in tech blogs or articles or whatever, they're all saying you should be on social media, most of it being Facebook or Twitter. And business people see that and they're like, okay, we'll go and get on Twitter, tell someone to set up our Facebook business page, and then that's it. There's no strategy, there's not always a proper thought process and who's actually going to be responsible for that social presence.
Yeah, and what I'm finding is so many clients are totally underestimating the commitment that's involved in Facebook and Twitter. Any social media involves an enormous amount of time on their part, and they've really got to understand it and genuinely enjoy tweeting and posting comments on Facebook. If it's totally alien to a client, you know, I'm kind of dissuading people from doing it unless they're passionate about it themselves or have a genuine interest.
They've got to be comfortable with it, They've got to be able to use it. It helps when they use it themselves. They have a bit more of an understanding of how the networking actually happens. That certainly helps people out. But then it also, like, there's hundreds of social networks. I mean, we talk about the main ones. You've got Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Those kind of ones are the main, but then you've got hundreds of others like Flickr. There's more photo content and aspects like that. So each network has its own unique content and audience, and how you speak to an audience on one is completely different how you might communicate with an audience on another.
Yeah, I think that's the other important thing. I think once a client does decide they want to do social media, it's then deciding which is the right one and just sticking to one or two and doing it well, rather than having all 5 icons across the website and then trying to do them all half-heartedly.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it as a build-up process. So you can say, right, we're going to start on a relatively simple one, say Twitter, if it's particularly relevant, where there's not a huge amount of time commitment because you're only making relatively small statements of news or updates. It's the networking that takes more of the time in that aspect. It's not the content generation. And then you can steadily build that up. You say, okay, well, we've got Twitter nailed now. We've been doing it for 6 to 8 months. It's going quite well for us. We've got a relatively good following. Let's try exploring the Facebook side of things.
Yeah, true. Do it sort of one stage at a time and build up to it.
It's all about having that content to talk about as well.
Yeah.
Because the worst situation is you set up Twitter, you set up Facebook, and then you're like, right, what do I say? You need to have some sort of content plan as well, whether that's news relating to your industry or your business, if that's relevant for the audience, or if it's new products or stuff that you're actually doing, so events that you're attending. If you're, going towards a load of conferences or something like that, where it's a very leading industry.
Yeah. It's got to have a clear purpose, definitely. There's no doubt about that. There's no point just doing it for the sake of it. I think you've got to have a clear purpose as to why you're on Facebook and what you want to get out of it. Because there are lots of benefits. You know, it's a great marketing tool. You can talk to your customers better than ever before. You can engage with people. You can spread the word virally. There's all those benefits, but you've got to have a clear purpose. And I think Facebook especially is not right for everybody. Well, the same applies to Twitter. You know, it depends on what you're selling and who you're targeting.
You know, if it's just business to business, then LinkedIn and Twitter may be more appropriate. Whereas because LinkedIn's the professional social network, you can get close to certain businesses or certain positions in certain businesses, whether you're targeting managers or whether you're targeting ordinary staff, as it were. And then there's sort of more B2C, where you're looking at Joe Blogs on the street, where Facebook it might be more applicable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And certainly with Facebook's advertising platform, for example, they've got a massive advertising platform, very similar to Google AdWords, and even more specific in terms of the demographics that they can target.
Yeah, true.
Target by the age of people, where they live, but then, kind of like what AdWords does, but then you've got like what they're interested in, what their likes are, what they do, whether they've moved house recently and silly things like that.
Don't get me wrong, I think Facebook marketing especially is extremely powerful, especially when it comes to mobile. You know, it gives you access to advertising in people's hand, which is really powerful and something you can't do on the web. But just the point I'm clear about is, unless you're going to do it well, then don't do it, because I really pull Facebook with only a handful of likes.
It has a negative effect,
it does.
doesn't it? It's kind of like a website would. Unless you do a website properly, you know, it has a negative effect on how people perceive your brand or perceive your product.
Yeah, but a website you can just put up there and leave. It doesn't need continual
no, that's the difference, isn't it?
That's the big difference.
That's the difference.
A website you can't just put up and leave it. But if you do that with a Facebook, it's going to be detrimental to the business, I think.
Yeah.